The body keeps the score. I was talking to a friend today about that. I thought I'd maybe talk about that here on this show. The idea of how my friend was telling me about how he has some back issues and how he deals with that and it's hereditary and kind of a degenerative disc thing, etc. And I was telling him how, and he even said that his body remembers the trauma when he was a young kid and memories and things that happened. I think in high school, he was playing, I think, football. And so then he injured his back. And now, of course, that injury is better, but the body keeps a score, meaning I'm trying to center myself here for the camera. I think that should be better. But I was telling him, he was telling me how his body remembers. And I was telling him of this book that maybe you know about called The Body Keeps a Score. I read it a couple years ago, and I have the PDF. I'm going to send him the PDF. If you want the PDF, by the way, please let me know, and I can send it to you as well. You can just drop your email, or you can just DM me, leave me a message. But I was telling him how, see if I can move a little bit over here so you can see me better. There you go. I think that's more centered. That the premise of this book basically is that when you experience trauma or some sort of painful situation, a memory basically, that what happens is that the cells within your body at the cellular level, they literally record, they take pictures of what you went through in that moment. And so then your body, your mind, your emotions, most of all, they keep that picture and it stays there forever unless you develop new pictures or you take new pictures of, let's say in my friend's case, we were talking about how some medication, pretty strong medication, helps him, and then massages and physical therapy and then riding his bike and just being active. Also, 3 weeks, I think he's kind of timed it, or 2 weeks of just being basically on his back resting, that it's pretty paralyzing to him, and where he has to deal with a lot of his fears of being paralyzed. He's a young man. But in that process, the body is taking new pictures of healing and of recovery, which then, of course, help him feel positive. And then, like he was telling me, after a couple of weeks of this new pattern, he then feels amazing and he can do anything. At the same time, he also is realizing that as he's aging, that he needs to slow down and maybe not pick up as much heavy stuff or not work out the same way that he used to. And I was telling him that this book, again, The Body Keeps a Score, is all about taking pictures, being aware of the pictures that your body has taken growing up, especially in your maybe teenage years, and then how the whole process of taking new pictures and getting on a new path that heals you is the process of healing yourself. And that could include medication, it might include even medical procedures, but it's the mind that is the one that's the least healed. That's where, I'm not saying that all illness or trauma is mental, of course, although I believe that it all starts in the mind. But for example, I deal with all kinds of stomach issues, and I've dealt with them really since I was, I think, born. My mom tells me that even as a young baby, I wouldn't, milk didn't sit well with me, and then as I got older, all kinds of stomach issues, and even to this day, I've dealt with stuff, and she deals with stuff, and I think my grandma, her mom. So it is kind of a family thing, and I don't ever remember having an event hurt my stomach, like let's say my friend with his back. But I do remember certain events, at least one or two, in my teenage years, most of all, where I felt my body tense up. And of course, what happens when your mind and your body tenses up? Well, of course, your gut is immediately affected. The connection between mind and your gut is everywhere. You can just go online and YouTube and just type in mind gut connection, and there's, I think, just even in the last month, I saw I don't think it was a TED Talk, but it was one of those long form interviews. Maybe it was, what's the name of that one? Tony something is his name, the guy who interviews these people. And so he had a doctor, something or the other, talk about this connection. Maybe it was Lewis Howe. I think it was Lewis Howe, different guy. So anyway, so you can look it up. But my point is that it is obvious that the mind is connected to your gut. And a doctor can say to you, oh yeah, you have some disease, right? Or some condition, chronic or some stomach thing. And most of the doctors might tell you that it's all stress related or anxiety related or dealing with, maybe they wouldn't say trauma, but it deals with your trauma. And then I was telling my friend, I was just telling him how it really is a flesh versus the spirit battle. The Bible calls it the narrow path and the wide path. And even though that passage, I think it primarily talks about salvation and going to heaven and how the narrow path leads to destruction, to eternity, but the wide path leads to destruction. But I also believe that it's a metaphor for the flesh and the spirit, where the flesh is the body keeping the score of trauma. I remember when I was, a teenager, I saw my grandfather have this seizure or this, I'm not sure what it was. I would say it was a seizure because my mom thought that he was dead, and that was her dad. And I remember most of all, not just my grandfather, but my mom's reaction, very, very out of control. And I think even to this day, when I see the potential of illness or someone in the family or myself not feeling well, I'm not rational, meaning, okay, go to the doctor, rest, take some Advil, get it checked out. That's not where my brain goes. My body keeps a score of that event and a few others where it's life or death. The war, there are a couple other things. And so through a lot of hard work, to this day, I still struggle with those images, but I've gotten on this narrow path to say, okay, wait a minute, is that really what's happening? Am I really dying? Is somebody really dying? If a friend, I see someone on TV whose stomach hurts or who has some injury or some heart attack or pancreatic this or gut that or you name it, anything that someone in my family or someone close to me has been through, I immediately absorb it into my consciousness, and it touches those cells that have been thinking of this for many years, and then immediately it turns to this trauma. And that's the wide path that leads to destruction, whereas the narrow path, that takes a lot of work. You have to retrain your brain. You have to really work against your emotions, work against everything in you. If you stay on that path, if you think truthful thoughts, then you have a chance at healing yourself and being healed. I would say the last 3 months, I've begun the healing journey of my stomach issue. Now, I don't think that issue is going to go away ever unless Jesus heals me miraculously, because the body keeps a score. But I can heal my body, and my body can heal one season at a time. And my mom, being an example, she's been through so many things, and at this age of her life, she's not a chronic sufferer of stomach issues. It bothers her at times. She has kind of her treatment that she takes when needed. She takes care of herself, as she would say, but it's not a chronic disease or pain. And she and I deal with very similar stuff. And she's retrained her body to take new pictures through the Word of God. For her, it's through experiences and traveling and being involved. She's a doer and a thinker. So by doing, for me, it's also thinking. It's also feeling. Shout out to Inside Out too. It's also God. And so images such as God is my strong tower, God is my shelter, God is my protector, God is my deliverer, literal images that I have in my phone of towers, of the name Uzi, which is a Hebrew word for God is my strength and my protector. I've written songs about God is my protector, God is my Uzi, God is my deliverer. Of course, I know the verses in Psalm 91, how I am under the shadow of his wings. So any image, any verse, but especially images, visuals, have helped me tremendously to stay on the narrow path, to retake or to take a new picture. And what happens, I was telling my friend, is over time, it could be months, years, a lifetime, you take enough pictures that your body, even though your mind is telling it to go down this other path of death and destruction, your body and your mind can fight against that and say, nope, don't go down that path. Instead, look at these new pictures of joy, of peace, of love, of strength, of courage, of godliness, of truth, so that you can defeat the enemy. And it is a spiritual battle. It's also a mental, emotional, and psychological battle. It's all of the above. And if you don't know what to do, then you will be defeated over and over again. And you will give in to anger, frustration, addictions, habits, whatever destructive behavior that you are into, you will give into that. Or you will become this perfect human being trying to be a perfect Christian, or the perfect son, daughter, wife, husband, whatever it may be, which eventually, of course, falls apart. The better way is to choose the road of happiness, the road of life, which is these new neuropaths, these new thoughts, these new pictures, as I call it, so that your body can know what to do. And all of this is subconscious, and it happens subconsciously. I can literally see someone on TV or anywhere that's dealing with X disease. And if that image connects to something in my past, I will feel it in milliseconds, unconsciously, subconsciously. I can't stop it. What I can do is prevent it from taking over. Sometimes it takes over. I've been through many months, years at times, where it's taken over. Or maybe I didn't know, or I don't know. I just wasn't able to choose differently. But through a lot of work, tons of counseling experience, reading, practicing, listening, you name it, I have discovered these truths. God has revealed them to me, and I am choosing every day to practice them, not perfectly, but at least knowingly, and teaching them to other people that deal with similar stuff, as my friend and I were talking about the other day today. So all these things are very powerful. We're talking about how, especially when it comes to midlife and being at this age of our lives, there's a lot of unhappiness that I think the body can experience, or the feelings, our emotions. We're talking about how we're not as strong, we're not as spry, we're not as bushy-eyed, we hurt easy, or we recover slower. And these are things that happen to men and women, but certainly as men. Him and I talking, it happens to us, and it's very shocking. I think it's like beauty for a woman. These things that you have always had, men, we always had strength, right? Speed, and you jump high, and you can pick up heavy things, and you're a machine, right? Just like women. Something that is given to them as a gift from God is beauty, and so many other things, of course. But anyway, when that begins to fail you as a man, you don't have beauty to rely on as a man. You don't have bearing of kids. You don't have a nurturing spirit. You don't have whatever, right? We have our strength, and then our desire to produce, to work, so that we can protect and provide for our wives and children in our homes. And when your body doesn't work with you, or I would say, when your mate isn't there, then you literally die. I mean, how many men who lose their wives, they die in a matter of months or years because of that? I don't really know why. Sadness, depression, no doubt. I think it goes back to purpose. What's my purpose now? I mean, I deal with it now with growing kids. What's my purpose if my kids are now 20 and older, 20, 21? Well, your work, right? Okay, your work is dependent upon your capacity to produce physically. I'm not saying that I work construction, but still you have to go to work. And as a man, I'm paid to think and to move and to work as a physical human. I'm not paid to think, right? I'm not paid to be beautiful or pretty. I'm not paid to, I don't know, whatever, right? To be young and youthful and energetic. As we age, we're paid to produce as men. But when that begins to fall and your body begins to betray you, then men can easily lose their motivation for living, especially if one or the other are gone, whether your mate is gone, which again deals with my purpose, because my purpose is to protect, provide for a wife and kids. And second, if your body fails you, now you don't have a work purpose. You don't have a purpose on this earth. And this is biblical. This is what God told Adam, right? He said to go and produce the land or take care of the land, manage the land, multiply, which deals with your wife and your kids and your family. So all of these changes that happen at midlife, whether you're 40, 50, whatever, they are radical. They are life and death. And Joseph Campbell, who's an amazing writer, he talks about the atonement that happens at midlife. I was telling my friend that it's like Abraham lifting that knife and about to kill or sacrifice his son. You are that son. We are Isaac. And I wouldn't say that God is the one with the knife. I would say maybe life, perhaps aging, perhaps just nature, living, humanity picks up the knife. And you have to be at that place where you truly believe you're going to die and you're going to lose your life, emotionally, physically, etc. And that could look like you lost your marriage, you lost your body, you lost your health at 45, at 50, whatever. You lost your career, you had failures morally or at work or physically or emotionally, or maybe you gave into an addiction, you gave into something terrible, and you are what people call hit bottom. Now, you can hit bottom many times throughout your life, depending on your circumstances. But let's say if you're an average person that doesn't have perhaps many bottoms, or doesn't hit bottom more than once, normally it happens at this mid-season. And when you hit that, it's atonement, it's death, it's Jesus on a cross, it's Gethsemane, it's Paul and the thorn in the flesh. It is all of these metaphors and verses. And again, Joseph Campbell with the atonement that really deal with death. There's no other way to put it. And it's not you choosing to be humble, you choosing to be a different person, you choosing to skip over that season. There's no such thing. Jesus didn't jump over the cross. He said that he endured the cross. He went to the cross. He says that he was led to the cross like a sheep, and yet, or like a lamb, and yet he did not. He remained silent. And so Jesus endured. He chose. He himself volunteered, or I don't know if that's the right word, but he himself offered himself up as a sacrifice, a sacrificial lamb, to take away the sin of the world. And so it wasn't when we go through this death, this atonement, this abyss is another word that some people use. I think Dante uses the word inferno, hell, basically, right? It's not something you choose. When you lose your marriage, lose your business, lose your health, lose a parent, lose a job that you love, lose your identity, lose your mind, it's not something that you choose. It's Abraham lifting that knife, and he's about to destroy you. Now, what happens in that moment when you're about to lose it all? Well, a ram appears, Jireh, right? You are enough. God the provider, God Jireh. We just sang that song on Sunday. He is enough. God provides. God provided for Abraham this ram that was in the bushes, right? This miracle. Why was there a bush there or a ram in the bush at that particular moment? How did that happen? That in the moment that Abraham, and take it more from Isaac's perspective, when Isaac was about to lose his life, his inheritance, his promise, he was a promised son. From Isaac would come Jacob and the 12 tribes of Israel, and Jesus the Messiah from the tribe of Judah. I mean, Isaac was the promised son, not Ishmael. It was Isaac, right? And yet here's Isaac saying, what's happening here? I'm about to lose my life. I thought I was this amazing man of God serving in the church and had this great career, this great job, making good money, and my wife loved me. My kids honored me. My parents were so proud. And now look at me. I've lost it all. What's happening here? Why is this knife over my head? Why is my dad doing this? Why is life, God, doing this to me? And in that moment is when Jireh appears. Isn't that crazy? You could say Abraham was God, right? Before Abraham was I am, said Jesus. So Abraham, Jesus was in, it's so crazy. Jesus was Isaac, you could say. He was a sacrificial lamb. Jesus was Abraham, and Jesus was the ram, right? The Lamb of God. And Jesus was the Father, who was Jireh. I mean, it's amazing, right? All these things pointing to our Lord. And yet in that moment, Jesus appears. And Abraham hears a voice, says, do not hurt your son. Do not hurt the child. Do not hurt the young man. And so instead, Abraham says that he took Isaac off of the altar. He undid his ropes. He untied his ropes. And yeah, exactly how love wins. Interesting repeating patterns. Very true. Thank you so much for the comment. Absolutely. Very interesting. Really, truth is revealed if you just have your eyes open. In so many incredible writers and the scriptures and images and metaphors pointing to the one truth. And as I said, then Jireh appears. And back to the midlife crisis, I guess we could call it. This book, it's called The Happiness Curve. It talks about how in order for us to get through that unhappiness that happens when you're on the altar, because let's face it, right? It's not happy times when you're about to be killed by your own father, about to be crucified by your own father and by your own followers and denied by your own disciples. It's no laughing matter, no joke when you lose it all. So how do we get through? Well, two conclusions of this book, The Happiness Curve. Basically, that book was a study done worldwide, thousands and thousands of, I believe it was men and women, in all cultures, colors, nations, tribes, ethnic backgrounds, languages. It wasn't just an American Western thing. And it talked about this happiness curve that starts in your 20s when things begin to kind of peak because you're at your youthfulness, you have all the potential, you're beautiful, you have all these things in front of you. And then things begin to kind of fall apart for that young person because they are struggling to reach those goals. But it gets worse at this bottom, at this curve, I guess, not a curve, but at this bottom, yeah. And normally 40s, 50s, somewhere in there, normally a 7 to 10 year span, it could be 5, it could be 10. The numbers aren't as consequential as just the patterns. And the conclusion, well, and then he says that it gets better after this lull, after this what's the word I'm looking for? This hole, I guess, whole lull. Anyway, and he says that the two ways to get through that season is don't do anything stupid and make less money and focus on serving others. So basically, he says that happiness on the other side of this lull, it is dependent upon you not screwing up your life, and second is by you making less money but being willing to serve and to give back, basically. And it makes a lot of sense. I think at first for any of us, certainly for a man who's a provider, the idea of making less money seems like, no way, I want to make more money. And that's what you see everywhere, right? You think you need, okay, well, I'm going to just make $100, $500, $1 million, and I'm going to die with $10 million. I'm going to be the richest man in the world. And really, the study, it actually talks about how you make less money on the other side of this, but you're happier. Why? Because you didn't destroy your life, so therefore you don't have all these horrible decisions and choices that are now haunting you, a bankruptcy or a broken marriage, or I don't know, having to deal with alcoholism. And even in that, God is merciful, right? But just talking through the more typical, family or maybe atypical pattern. You hit bottom and you recover. And on the other side, you choose to not destroy your life, to not get that crazy car, to not sleep around, to not give into addictions and to destructive behavior. But you resist the devil, you flee from him, and you then basically have less. You do with less. You live within your means. You're no longer needing to have that corner office and the fancy car and the trophy wife and the perfect body. Instead, you are content. It's not settling, although it is settling, perhaps. Maybe settling is a great way to put it. It's about contentment. That's what the Bible calls it, contentment. I was looking up the the Greek word, when I preached on this years ago. And the Greek word for contentment is a bicycle with two wheels that are both aligned. It's like the idea of equally yoked, of having these two very strong wheels that if one is flat, the whole thing falls apart, or one is smaller than the other, then it's out of balance or whatever. Right? Instead, these two wheels are moving in the same direction. That is contentment. Or back to the yoke, if these two oxen are pulling in the wrong or pulling against each other, then they're going to probably fight and kill each other and destroy the cart, and the whole crop thing all falls apart. Or if they are yoked, meaning there's this heavy burden on their backs which restrains them, then they're able to move things along. And that's the idea of contentment. It's not fun, right? I mean, we would rather live in excess. That's the American way. Eat more, be fatter, be less, have more, be less content, be more pessimistic, focus on the negative, focus on what you don't have and what you can't afford and what you should have, and anger at this and that president and this government and all of that, all the lies and deception that the devil puts in front of us as humans, whereas the truth of God is much simpler and much more beautiful, which is to be content with living within your means, you could say it. This is the other side of the happiness curve. And this book says that if you make those choices, you will see your happiness ascend once again. In this troph is what I was trying to think of. I was thinking of a cow. Troph, right? So in this troph, that's the right word, I believe, Trough. When you get through a troph, I believe is where cows or pigs eat from, right? So when you're through this troph, then on the other side of this dip, then if you make the right choices of living within your means, of serving others, and of not destroying your life, you will see your happiness, the book says, the study says, be even greater than in your 20s, when you were at the peak and you were young and beautiful. And remember those pictures, right? I look at those pictures and I think, wow. And I think of my parents. One is with Jesus now. I think of my mom. I think of my in-laws who are also with Jesus. I think of people that are in their 70s and 80s, 60s, who are living happily, contently. I have a beautiful man that I know. He's probably in his 80s. I hope I look like him when I'm in my 80s. Man, this man, again, as a vain man, right? Who among us isn't vain? He has beautiful hair. His skin is nice. He's got a tan always, and he's a musician, and he's handsome, and he wears a little nice gold chain. And I'm thinking, man, he's got, and I asked him the other day, he was actually telling me, he's like, Trigger, I'm 83. I'm like, 83? I'm going to interview him for the podcast one of these days. And I can guarantee, you know why I know? Every Tuesday, I've seen him a few times, he goes on a date with his wife at noon to Chick-fil-A. Every Tuesday. These are choices that this man has made for, 50, 80 years. Well, meaning in terms of his marriage, probably 50, 60 years. I don't know. And I'm sure a lot of other little choices and the choices of omission, the things he didn't do. Now, I'm not saying he was some perfect saint or he didn't do this or that. I don't know him that well. But you don't get to be that age and be that beautiful on the outside. And I know him somewhat. Beautiful on the inside, and date your wife at 80 at Chick-fil-A. Not a fancy meal in Laguna Hills or in some fancy restaurant in Vegas or Dubai, right? Nothing wrong with that. But back to doing with less, living within your means. Chick-fil-A, hey man, that's my budget, right? And it's kind of ironic because we were talking about budget and stuff for this other thing, and he was saying how he would like to earn more. And we were talking about kind of how much he makes, and we were just talking as men. I probably make 10 times what he makes, and he is 80 plus, and I want to be like him. The point is, it's not about making more money post this trough. It's not. It's about making less. Now, I'm not saying that he wants to be poor. We're not talking about poverty. We're not talking about also just saying, oh, I don't need anything. It's about making a choice. And whereas we all kind of get there kicking and screaming. And here's the thing. Ideally, and this is maybe a little bit of my story and maybe other quote middle class people or whatever, right? Maybe the American way. The older that you get, you have less expenses, right? I mean, we're getting ready to depart this earth. So it makes sense that we're doing with less, right? People say you need less sleep, less food. You have less people to take care of. So therefore you have less expenses. So therefore you need less money, right? I mean, this is normal. This is death and dying, right? Not to be morbid, but we're dying, right? Our parents, my father is with Jesus. My in-laws are with Jesus. They weren't wearing gold chains as they were departing this earth. They were talking about Jesus. They were talking about their families. And so why should we, oh, well, I want to leave my kids with an inheritance of $10 million. Well, let them develop their own way. Yes, of course, I wouldn't say leave them with some huge debt. But my point is, we're getting ready for this next life. And we probably should be getting ready to die with less, not with more. Because as people say, you're not going to take it with you. Well, my kids. Isn't it funny how I hear these boxers, I love boxing or basketball, and these guys that make $8 million, 300 million, 8 years, $300 million contracts. And they're saying, well, I want to make sure my kids are taken care of. Thank you. What? What are you spending $330 million on in 8 years? I mean, what, right? Even it doesn't compute, right? We as humans know how much life costs. It doesn't take $330 million to raise yourself or your kids or their kids. I mean, right? We know up here that you don't need that much money. Now, when you're in your 20s and 30s, that's all you think about, right? It's like sex, right? When you're like a teenager, that's all you think about. When you don't have any money, it's all you think about. When you don't have something, it's all you think about. As we age, and back to this book of happiness, and getting back on top or reaching that new height or being happier than ever, as Billie Eilish would say, it's about doing with less. And as my friend, the 83-year-old man that I love so much, I don't see him driving a fancy car, and yet I want to be like him. I want to be like my mom. I want to be like my father. I want to be like my father-in-law who's with Jesus. Men and women who died rich. And this is what we preach, right? The riches are in heaven. But when you're on earth, certainly through midlife, and unless you just never mature, you think it's all about more and amassing more stuff. Even though we hear the stories, the parables, Jesus, how many times did Jesus say, right? Wherever your treasure is, there, or your eye is, or there your treasure is. You cannot serve both God and money. But we say, well, but I need this, I need that. And again, back to the baseball star, the boxing star. It never ends. And so true happiness, it doesn't seem to come as a result of having more stuff after midlife. It's about certainly accumulating that egg, right? Retirement and whatever you can do in your 20s, 30s, and 40s, perhaps 50s. But then once you hit the wall and everything hits the fan and you fall on your face and you fail at X, then it's about dying. It's about death and resurrection. And then, as I said, back to my friend, we're talking about the body keeps a score. How you have to then develop new habits, because this happiness and making the right choices of not screwing up your life, giving into addictions or whatever it may be, that the reason why we give into those things is because our bodies keep the score. You remember how in your teens you drank a lot to get through, to get by the anxiety, your parents fighting, or that essay or whatever abuse you went through. And so, or dope or drugs or gangs or drinking or being the perfect Christian or the perfect wife or the perfect student, you know your body remembers what it did to cope. And so at midlife, when you're hitting bottom, guess what you're going to be tempted to do? The same old things, right? That's what Solomon said. Nothing is new under the sun. Everything repeats, basically, right? It's the same old thing. The way to break those generational curses, those habits, those scorecards that we keep in our DNA, in the cellular molecular level, is through the power of the Spirit and developing new habits. And it's really through death. I don't think it's about some sort of positive affirmation. It's not about going to a retreat. It's not even about reading your Bible or going to church. You have to die. I mean, this is what Jesus did. You have to die in order to live. You have to. What did Jesus say? Deny yourself, carry the cross and follow me. Deny yourself is death. Carrying the cross is death. And following me is death. But it leads to life. It leads to this new renewed mind, renewed body, renewed self, and to happiness, contentment, joy, whatever you want to call it. Some people, they fight with me on happiness. I don't mean to equate happiness with joy or spiritual joy or fruits of the Spirit or contentment. I'm talking about the same thing: wellness, contentment, peace, the fruits of the Spirit. It's all the same thing. I'm not saying that happiness is, happiness, we shouldn't pursue happiness. Okay, Mr. Awesome Christian, calm down. My point is that to get to that other side, basically to return to the joy of your salvation, to the peace that you grew up with, to that childlike faith, to those beautiful memories that when I was a little boy, I would play the guitar and just be content. My little young son, who's now 20, 21, when he was 8 and he would play basketball, he had this huge smile on his face. He's like, here, pass me the ball, pass me the ball. And every time he'd get the ball, he was so happy. And when he didn't get the ball, I could see that smile begin to fade. That's Psalm 139, faith. When you're fearfully, wonderfully made. To return back to that, we have to die. And it's not a choice. It's not a thing. Your choice is to not let it destroy you. Your choice is to let God do it. Your choice is to walk with someone who knows. That's why my friend and I were talking about the power of us talking. We talked for like 2 hours on the phone today. It was just like, man, we were laughing, joking, all kinds of nonsense. Because two grown men were able to talk about real stuff. And then we talked about work, and we were just talking about music and all the other stuff and our wives and all these things. But it was just beautiful. And that's what I love about this whole thing of life and conversation. That's why I love to share, and in person more than anything, and to do it impromptu or spontaneously even more. So, community is what I guess I'm here to offer. Relationship, conversation, and I don't have a course. I don't have anything except just my time, my knowledge, whatever little knowledge I have, books I've read, and just wisdom from above, and really to learn. My friend was helping me with some things, and I was helping him. Then I talked to my other friend. There's about 4 of us at my work that are all in the same kind of Gen X, kind of midlife-ish, some younger, some a little older. And my other friend and I were also joking about our marriages, not joking about our marriages, but laughing at how we both have different kinds of wives, and he's more like my wife and I'm more like, so it was kind of one of those things like, okay, what do you do when? And so we were just joking about things. And then I was talking to my other friend, also similar age, and we were joking about top 10 most popular albums of the 90s and early 2000s. And we're talking about Nirvana and about, what was it, One Direction and AC/DC and Thriller. It was just a fun Gen X moment. It's fun to be a Gen Xer. It's very weird to be at this age now where we are the old people. And yet this young generation, my kids who are 20 and 24, or in their 20s, early 20s, do they need our advice? Yes. Do they listen? Yes. Are they open? Yes. Are they bombarded with way more stuff because of TikTok and the rest? Yes. Am I concerned? Yes. But we have the answers in Jesus, in wisdom, in the things that we're talking about. Thank you for your comment. Yes, definitely. Truth reveals itself. You're right, Trick. Learning to listen is a challenge, but so worth it. Wise man, speaking of cycles and habits, remember, USC, you're the same and even better now. We love you, buddy. Thank you, my brother. Thank you, my brother. Thank you so much. Love wins. I know who you are. Please, are you Ed? Is this Ed? I'm sorry, brother. Yeah, I think it's Ed and my brother, Alec. Thank you, my 2 beautiful friends. I love you both. And please love your mom. You know how much I love her and miss her. And she was a mentor to me so much. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, guys. Yeah, I love you. Yeah, yes, Ed. Hello, Ed. My beautiful Ed. I can literally see your face in my mind's eye right now. And Alec, Alec, right? Not Alex, Alec with a C. And your beautiful mom. You know how your mom was a mentor to me for many years. I had her on my show and all the rest here at my house. And my goodness, it's crazy how at SC so much beautiful stuff happened in such a little short amount of time, right? Right, Ed? Just, yeah, of course, Peggy. My goodness. I mean, I forget you guys, but I'll never forget Peggy, okay? Let's just be clear on that. My priceless Peggy. But yeah, what a beautiful mentor she is to me. And you both, of course, are such dear sons of mine, spiritual sons. And all this stuff, right? I mean, you guys are not Gen Xers. You're millennials. You're Gen Ys, I believe. Probably millennials, but or maybe Gen Y, as my kids are 20s. And yeah, I mean, I know we've talked about kidney recovery and some of the amazing content that you guys are creating. By the way, you guys got to check out Love Wins in their channel. I have very few followers, but this amazing brother combination, they're creating amazing, meaningful content that is powerful, meaningful, and changing lives. And so please check that out. And yeah, Gen Y, right, looking up to us. And so, yes, what I was talking about with my kids as well, guys, is how this wisdom, I'm so blessed by Gen Y, my kids included, and you guys, of course, because of your openness. I mean, I saw that from you guys. I felt it from day one. I mean, it's obvious, right? The way people just connect naturally, and I connected with you guys like two peas in a pod and whatever. And I have felt that so many times with young people. I'm now at a beautiful church, by the way, guys, in Costa Mesa Lutheran Church, filled with young people in middle school, high schoolers, college, everywhere. Most of my musicians and kids that I disciple and teach, I taught math there, are young Gen Y and even younger, Gen Z, and I don't know, I guess back to A, right? Whatever that is, Alpha, Generation Alpha. And there's so much hope and I feel so happy being able to share and these young people listening and creating their own content and changing the world. My kids, David is in his fourth year at UCSB studying communication. He wants to talk like his dad. Lord Jesus, Lord help him, right? There's my Gosa bell right there. Gosa means joy, my joy bell. And then our daughters graduated. One is a social media manager for speaking of social media manager for a vet clinic. And then our middle daughter is a psychology graduate, and she's thinking of going into therapy. God help her, right? She's currently working at oh yeah, I'm ringing the bell. That's why Roxy, our dog, is having fun. So I'm so proud of our kids and you guys and what you guys have done. I believe that Alec, right, studied Alex studied engineering, and you, Ed, you studied film. And so from, this little place called USC, this little tiny school down the street. Beautiful, beautiful men of God, both of you, man. You guys need to date my daughters and marry. I mean, how many times you guys get that right? Such handsome young men. Yeah, sorry. I had to put in my 2 cents. I have 2 daughters. So, yeah, I think sharing and loving each other and sharing wisdom is beautiful. These books that I'm reading are powerful. I just got one that I'm reading with my other Gen X friend, Robbie is his name, called Obedience in the Same Direction. He's an Enneagram 1. I'm an Enneagram 3. And Enneagram 1s, if you know the Enneagram, it's a personality typology, kind of faith-based. I think better than the MBTI and all the rest. But anyway, he's a 1, which is the reformer. I'm a 3, who is the achiever. And his spiritual practice is obedience. Obedience, not disobedience. Obedience. Mine is humility and hope. And because he struggles with perfectionism, so for him it's about not being perfect, being obedient. And for me, I struggle with vanity and exhaustion and deception, not knowing myself. And so for me, I have to constantly remember that I'm worthy because of God, not because of what I accomplish. So we're both reading this book, kind of a book club, and I think we're going to maybe post some of our readings here online somehow about this book called Obedience in the Same Direction by Eugene Peterson, who wrote The Message. He's now with Jesus in heaven. Rest in peace. I think he died in 2016. But we're both reading this book, and so I'm excited for that. And then, as I said, I am on this journey, kind of like you guys, to document older people and what they're doing. Oh, thank you, my brother. Yeah, driving now. Okay, careful. Thank you both for listening. I love you both so much. And my dear Peggy, please give her my hugs and kisses and just tell her how much I love her, praying for her and both of you guys. But I think something that as I age that I think I'd like to do more of is to document older people sharing their wisdom. I mean, I know whatever, one or two things, but as I said, that 80-year-old, I want to hear his story. I want to hear another man story. Is my brother-in-law's father. So I don't know what that makes him to me, but his name is Fred. I love you, Fred. He's an amazing man, also in his maybe 80s. And doctor of ministry, pastor, seminary teacher, professor, been through hell and back. My goodness, marriage and failures and job and all the rest, all kinds of crazy. And we were just talking last week at I think it was a graduation for my nephew. Yes, shout out to Charlie, who's 18. I was about to ring my Gosa bell, but Roxy the dog will kind of go crazy. So there it is. But talking to Fred, and man, we talked for like 2 hours. I wish there were cameras and 2 SM7Bs just to record the whole thing. Kind of Lex Ludger, what's his name? I love that guy. Kind of that podcast style, because the way we were interacting was just magical. He was sharing such gems about the same thing: atonement, death, and resurrection. About him going back to his kids, get this, at 80 and saying, "I'm sorry, son, and I want to do better." He was there at this party as a result of all the hard work that he's done to come back from death to life, not just physically, but spiritually and emotionally and relationally with his adult 50-year-old kids. And there I was being blessed by this man's wisdom and character. Another man that I want to interview is actually the pastor that I work with right now. He's my age, but wow, because I've been in his seat, I was a senior pastor for 10 years. I can see character when I see it, and it challenges me because it's mostly just conflict in the church, nothing moral or crazy, but conflict in the church is crazy. And watching him, I dealt with similar stuff, watching how he has shown his character, I would love to ask him, maybe not right now because he's still kind of in the middle of it, but maybe in a year or two, just say, "Hey man, what were you thinking?" Not like in that way, right? What were you thinking? But what was going through your mind? What were the choices? Speaking of choices, right? Back to this book, The Happiness Curve. My pastor, he could have made some really tough choices to hurt people, to be an egomaniac, to be your typical pastor, or to lose control and sleep with a secretary, right? All the stuff we hear on TV and the news. But so far, he's an amazing man. And he's an amazing man regardless, but so far, he has shown only integrity. My point is that I feel like in my second half of life, of course, pastoring and ministering is my number one expression. But as far as this online stuff, I want to do interviews with young and old, with old and young, black and white, Spanish and English, and all the rest, to share these stories. And the angle is this idea of the atonement and Joseph Campbell and all this happiness curve. Whether you are in your 20s and 30s and you're kind of like descending quickly into this abyss called existential crisis and quarter life crisis, or you're in the middle of that trough, whatever the word is, and you're maybe making some bad choices, or you are making some good choices like my pastor, and or you're on the other side like my 80-year-old friend and like my father-in-law, my brother-in-law's father, who are now in their 70s and 80s, and you can just see the peace, my mom included, the peace in their lives, the scars to show it. I would say my dear Peggy is an example of that, right? That beautiful woman. I mean, I met her, 10, 15 years ago, and she was already gorgeous inside and out. I can only imagine what more God has done in her life that would be worth sharing. And I want to do that. I feel like it's like a calling that I've had for many years, and I've been running from it because I don't know why. Probably just I wasn't ready. I wasn't humble enough. I wasn't serving enough. See, happiness curve. I was still striving for more money, success, fame. I want the follows. I want about all that stuff of your youth, which is fine. But now at this season of life, I wanted to share stories, not for me, but to inspire anyone, young people, people my age, people older, because we need inspiration. Top 5 albums for 2024. Okay, so number 1, this is from, I think it was, what did he look up? It wasn't GQ magazine. He looked up something. I was talking to my friend, 28-year-old young friend. Shout out to Zane. Number 1, Thriller. Yes. Number 2, you'll never guess. It wasn't Beyonce. It wasn't the Beatles. Can you believe it? Remember, albums, not just hits or singles. Number 2. So number 3, I'll tell you, I think it was Beyonce. And then number 4, I think was Queen. And number 5 was maybe Adele. But number 2, you'll never guess. We certainly didn't guess. And I'll just give it to you. Now, here's a hint that my friend Zane gave us. Shout out to Zane. Zane, is this real? He said that this is an Australian band and that the lead singer died and someone else took over. Australian band? Top 5 of all time? Really? Albums? More than the Beatles? Anything good come out of Australia? I mean, I love me a kangaroo or two and some Crocodile Dundee, but come on, somebody. AC/DC, can you believe that? Is AC/DC from Australia, Ed? I mean, this guy, Zane, you are zany, bro. You are zuni. You are nuts. Where is AC/DC from? Let's see here. Watch them be from Australia. Watch them like be Aussies. Can you believe it? Are an Australian rock band? Founded by brothers Malcolm Young on rhythm guitar and Angus Young. Okay, you win. With that said, I am out of here. Thank you guys for being here. I love you all. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. The Body Keeps the Score. I love you all. Ed, I love you and your mom and your brother. Let's do something together. Love wins. See you later, guys. Adios. Let's see. Where is that? There it goes.